Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. We've got Ryan Grimm on with an update on a billionaire candidate in the Democratic primary Wisconsin Senate race that I think you're going to enjoy. We also have Chris Smalls on the show. He's, of course, the Amazon organizer. So much to talk to Chris about, including the lawsuit filed by the New York Attorney General against Amazon that claims Chris Smalls himself was improperly fired, so can't wait to hear from him on that. But we wanted to start with the very latest on Neera Tanden's confirmation hearing.
A very interesting development here in Washington, in which Neera Tanden almost certainly does not have the votes to be confirmed after Joe Manchin came out against her.
It's heartbreaking.
Now, the real question there, though, is what is the White House going to do about it? I would assume, and most people did, that they were going to do what everybody does in this scenario, which is say, well, we tried, and you gracefully exit and you give her some presidential appointment position. But they are going to 100% bat, basically pressuring Chuck Schumer and others to try and find one more vote in order to confirm Neera. We'll give you a couple of examples. A White House press secretary from the official account says Neera Tanden equals accomplished policy expert, would be first Asian American woman to lead the OMB. I didn't know that made a difference in budgeting. Has lived experience, having benefited from a number of federal programs as a kid. Looking forward to committee votes this week and continuing to work toward her confirmation. And again, Krystal, this is delusion. There is not another vote. She's not particularly qualified for the job. But like I said, they are going to complete bat for her. She was asked in the White House press briefing about whether they're going to pull her nomination. Here's what Jen Psaki had to say.
Mitt Romney said he is critical of extreme rhetoric. Susan Collins says she's demonstrated exactly the kind of animosity President Biden pledged to transcend. Manchin said he's worried that her statements will have a toxic and detrimental impact on the working relationship that they're expected to have with the budget director. So does the White House believe that her past statements are inflammatory?
Well, Caitlin, the president would not have nominated her if he did not think she would be an excellent OMB director. And we'll continue to work in supporting her nomination.
So you still see a cap to 50 votes or more?
We do.
I don't know what path you're living in, but I don't see one, and it's really bizarre to spend all this political capital on Neera Tanden for OMB. We're not talking about the Secretary of Defense here.
Anything. Well, this was always predictable.
Yeah.
From the minute that she was announced, it was always questionable because who are the moderate Republicans that you're going to try to pull over if you lose a Joe Manchin or even if you lose a Bernie Sanders, which remains somewhat of a possibility? You would look to the Collins, you would look to the Romneys. What is their obsession above all else? Civility. So the fact that she violated the norms of civility is what's ultimately sinking her nomination here. And look, I mean, I find it so silly. I've seen so many progressives online, progressive leaders. I talked about this yesterday who are going to bat for Neera because the reasons that the Republican senators are giving that Manchin give for opposing her are kind of the wrong reasons. Like, obviously, I care a lot more about her conflicts of interest,
right,
the way that she's operated, the way she's wielded power here in D.C., than about her mean tweets. But ultimately, I don't care. All I care about is the result of whether or not she's ultimately confirmed. Now, the very interesting thing here is immediately, and I don't even know if they had to talk about this, they're just all immediately on the same talking points, using her identity to say anyone who's opposed to her is sexist, they're racist, they're standing in the way of progress. You can see this in a new Politico wrote up, a double standard is going on. You guys are just biased against Neera because she's a woman. I showed you yesterday Elise Hoag's tweet that was like, she's a good woman is being punished for being outspoken. It has nothing to do with that. And we've seen this now multiple times for the Biden administration where they really try to use identity as a shield for basically everything else. Jen Psaki, we should have pulled this up, but she got asked recently a question about, what are you doing for my small business? And her answer was, well, first of all, we nominated a woman to head the Small Business Administration. I'm sure the hundreds of thousands of small businesses that have struggled and gone under this year are going to be really comforted to know that it's going to be a woman who's now overseeing their demise. So that's the playbook that they're running on this, and ultimately it's not really getting them anywhere.
No, and it drives me insane, especially because if you, in this Politico article, they quote Judy Chu. She's the head of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. She says, Neera's nomination is very significant for us Asian American Pacific Islanders. I do believe this double standard has to do with the fact she would be a pioneer in that position. And again, no, she doesn't. This position has nothing to do with advancing the cause of Asian Americans or anything. It has to do with paying off, essentially, with appointments, a longtime Democratic apparatchik who has funneled multi-millions of dollars into the campaign coffers and used her Twitter account and organization and clout in Washington in order to crush a progressive political left. That's what this entire thing is about. And imagine if anybody made this case about people who voted against Nikki Haley. And I have the luxury of being the same race as Nikki Haley and Neera Tanden, and I can tell you, I can't stand both. So you can't say that you're gonna level some accusation. Like, what we're talking here is about trying to transcend identity and say, okay, what is a good OMB director? In my opinion, a good OMB director is somebody who has experience. She has no experience. Number two, doesn't have ethical conflicts. She has immense numbers of ethical conflicts. And three, isn't a complete and total political apparatchik, because that's probably not what you want whenever it comes to the nation's budgeting. We somebody who fails on all three criterion.
So the other thing, in that original Jen Psaki tweet that we put up there, she said something about, I don't know if we can throw that back up on the screen.
The first element.
A1B. Or no, A1A. There we go. She has lived experience having benefited from a number of federal programs as a kid. First of all, I'm really starting to hate that phrase, lived experience, because it just gets thrown around for absolutely everything. But oh, by the way, Matt Brunig pointed this out on Twitter. He said, the program she benefited from as a kid was the one she also went on to help dismantle while working in the White House. She has no real accomplishments nor policy expertise. Her role for the last decade has been raising money from Clinton circles. And even if you like Neera Tanden's ideology and what she's done when she's been in positions of power, it is so blatantly clear that her appointment to this position has nothing to do with her policy position. It has to do with that second part that Matt talks about, raising money from Clinton circles for the past decade. And the fact that so many people circle the wagons around her in this town is also because Center for American Progress has their hands in everything. Everyone knows staffers who were there, and they're so influential in this town that nobody feels like they can really go up against Neera ultimately. So that's why you see everybody circling the wagons. It's protecting their own. It's protecting their own sort of like fashion of the industrial complex. Faction of the industrial complex.
That's the worst part. We're being gaslit on identity politics when what this is really about is about paying off somebody within the circle. And that's why I think it's important to cover this, because the White House is spending, if the White House of the United States, in the middle of a global pandemic and depression and all of that, in which Neera Tanden's nomination to OMB has no real consequence in terms of the impact on Americans' lives, is spending immense amounts of political capital and their time, which is the most valuable thing in the world, in making sure that this woman, they do everything impossible in order to put her in her position. And we have all three U.S. senators who matter have already come and said it's not going to happen. Let's throw some of these statements up. Susan Collins, for the reasons that we already said, is that she violates that pledge that Biden made. She doesn't have
the experience nor the temperament to lead the critical agency, is what she said.
Let's put Romney's up there. It's basically the exact same thing. Critical of extreme rhetoric from prior nominees. This is consistent with his position. And Manchin obviously also said the exact same thing. So I don't know what fantasy votes that they are counting anywhere around here. They are pushing this news cycle, and it tells you everything you need to know about who they feel beholden to, about spending extraordinarily valuable political capital on, and it's very revealing about this entire system.
If you are more worried and outraged about Neera Tanden having her career ambitions thwarted than you are about, say, $2,000 checks immediately becoming $1,400 checks whenever we get around to it, and $15 minimum wage going to, well, I support it in principle, but I'm not really willing to fight for it. If you're not as outraged about those things as you are about Neera Tanden's career, then maybe you should evaluate your priorities.
Exactly right.
All right, we're going to have our radars for you. That's next.